The topic is living up to your best self. And this entire series of the Life Seminar is divided into the different parts as Rabbi had in the definitions. There's the aspects of Judaism between you and yourself and you and your peers and you and Hashem. And I think as like a way of introduction, this topic of living up to your best self is a great kind of opener that has to do with a lot of the different things we're going to be hearing from CEOs and psychologists and all the different amazing talent that's going to be coming in here. And that is just understanding our relationship with internal growth, with growth in terms of our relations with our peers, with all these different types of relationships. Growth is the mindset of the Life Seminar. So how does that really work, and what is that all about? So a common theme in literature and movies, especially in the fantasy realm, is, this is for you, India, is this idea of this like regular or even less kind of guy or even better kid who's downtrodden, he's an underdog, and he's just so plain, and there's nothing going for him in his life. And then you have this, what was that? Well, you clearly didn't read the first chapter of... He was very marginalized in a closet. And then there's this moment where there's this revelation where actually he is a chosen one. He has these incredible talents that you know, he ends up in this whole other world where everyone looks up to him and like, oh my gosh, he's going to save the day. And it's, I mean, this is just one example. Obviously, there's tons and tons of these. It's very recurring because there's something that speaks very deeply to us about this idea of like, he could have lived the rest of his life, you know, not even knowing that he was a wizard, and then eventually, and you know, and what a shame that would be. And that's that idea that Rabbi Garfield was talking about, like this guy's a millionaire, but he doesn't know how to tap into it, right? If he would have been in the closet for the rest of his life, you know, he never would have tapped into that incredible thing. And that's really every single one of us in terms of our Judaism, but also in terms of our potential, in terms of our ability to grow in all those areas, be it our relationship with ourselves, self-improvement and growth, be it our relationship with the people around us where we think we're so mediocre and we just don't really have the ability to have good relationships, and be it professionally, be it in terms of our relationship with God. This is really what growth and Judaism is all about. I guess this is part of the series with the rabbi who the rabbi who stole Christmas. Yes, Jacob?
Are you saying cute rabbis are like the Hogwarts letter that like randomly flies into your house, or like the emails you guys send?
We will work on the we'll work on the analogies later. It's going to be great. So the Greeks were incredible philosophers, and the Romans conquered the entire Greek Empire and saw themselves as a continuation of the Greek Empire, and therefore they like to think of themselves as philosophers, even though they were quite mediocre, if you ask me. So you have, this is Turnus Rufus. He was a Roman general, you know, doesn't look too impressive, and he approached Rabbi Akiva with the following philosophical question. He asked him, "Tell me, Rabbi, what is greater, the deeds of God or the deeds of man?" Okay, so he's asking a rabbi, what's greater, right? So, you know, obviously everyone knows what the rabbi is going to respond. So Rabbi Akiva said, the deeds of man. He's shocked, doesn't know how to take it. It's like, that's blasphemy. How could he say such a thing? And Rabbi Akiva said, well, let me grab a stalk of wheat and a piece of 7-layer cake, and you tell me what's greater, the deeds of God or the deeds of man. Now we understand they're not in competition, right? God created wheat so that you can then turn it into 7-layered cake with glaze and cherries on top, right? Meaning, what he was trying to tell Turnus Rufus is our job in life is to take the resources that God gave us and make something great out of them. Now, what was really going on behind the scene, the reason why Turnus Rufus was suddenly this incredible, deep philosopher is because he was trying to set Rabbi Akiva into a trap. And the trap was, why do you Jews circumcise your babies? God clearly made them a certain way. Why are you interfering? So this was all a setup. Rabbi Akiva saw right through it. And in his answer, he was basically answering the trick question, because the whole idea of circumcision is symbolic of this idea that God wants us to interfere and to use the starting tools that God gives us and make something better and greater out of them. God didn't create a world that is, ready. It's like this microwave dinner. God created a world that we're supposed to work and improve and build, and that's true about the world around us. And what circumcision implies, it's actually true about us as human beings. So if you Google this idea of people having imperfections and people having things that are just not, we have our, the things that we're not so great at, various character traits, you will get the following message again and again and again and again. The flaws, the mistakes I make, that's the real me. Nobody's perfect. Love your imperfections. Love your flaws. It goes on and on and on. And it's this feel-good idea of like, just don't worry about it. You're great the way you are. That's just the way you were born. And just embrace it and love it. And it's beautiful. It feels good. But the reality is that there's something very, very tragic about this. If we understand that the way we are born is a starting point, it's something we're supposed to be working with, what a shame to say, here, you wanted to ask something, Rabbi?
No,
I thought so. No, I got it. Okay. So if, imagine a guy who's hired to construct the next major downtown skyscraper, and he's given the tractors and the lumber and the steel, all the tools he needs. And the project manager comes back a few months later, and he sees that he's kind of piled them up. You see how he's piled the things, and he piles these, and he's like, you know what? I've tried whatever I can to like just pile it, and this is what you gave me, and it's just not a skyscraper. I'm sorry, you didn't give me a skyscraper. So that guy is obviously going to be worse than fired, because the idea was these are tools he's supposed to use to create something big. This isn't the end product. This is the starting point. Take that, make something great out of it. That's what it's supposed to be looking like, not just staring at it, right? And the people in the previous slide online, what they're doing is basically saying, okay, fine, so you're lumber and steel. Fine, that's what you are. Just embrace it, love it, and move on, right? It's tragic.
So don't settle.
Don't settle for the way you were born. That is the starting point that you're supposed to build upon. Try to figure out how you can grow as a person, personally, in terms of relationship with your peers, in terms of relationship with Hashem. That is our goal in life. So what are these character traits that we're trying to work on? What are examples of things that perhaps are not things that we should be embracing? So obviously, emojis say it best. This is what we usually look like. It's called laziness, anger. This is me sometimes. Haughtiness. This is deviousness, I guess, or greed or cruelty. This one's great because you can read whatever you want into it. This guy's jealous. This is clearly a jealous emoji. Maybe also suspicious. I think he looks suspiciously jealous. Okay, so these are just examples of not. Most of us are not this all day or this all day, but we kind of have like a nice mixture of all of the above, to varying degrees. And our job in life is not to say, okay, that's who I am, deal with it. Our job is to say, interesting, this is a great starting point. What can we do? How can we work with this and become better people? I was actually talking to a guy once, and he was telling me how it's very hard for him to, this idea that Rabbi was saying about a gift being about the other person. I actually was telling him something similar, obviously not with the same amount of energy, and but I was conveying this idea, and he's like, no, but that's not me. I'm more of a selfish kind of guy. I don't have a selfish emoji. Maybe somehow it gets combined in this because he's not sharing his pizza. But he's like, that's just not who I am. I said, but don't you want to get married one day and have a meaningful relationship when this is like the most basic aspect of relationship? He's like, well, anyone who marries me is going to have to understand that's who I am. Okay, so I hope whoever that person is doesn't call me to ask about the guy, because what can I say, right? That's a tragedy. That's the same kind of a tragedy. These are starting points. Whatever degrees of these things we have, these are things we want to be working with. So here's an interesting Talmudic discussion, okay? This is an acronym for volunteer fire department, okay? So firefighters are heroes. They go into danger, and they save people, and they have really cool gear, and it's an incredible thing. But we also understand that it's their job, okay? And then you have something like a volunteer fire department who do all the same things, but it's not their job. They're just volunteers. They're doing it just for the sake of helping other people. And if I were to ask you, what's more valuable? What's more incredible? What would you tell me? The guys who are doing it as their job, or the volunteers? Volunteers. That's what I would have said myself. Fascinating thing is the Talmud has a different approach. Rabbi Hanina taught, greater is the one who acts because he is commanded than one who acts without being commanded. How is that possible? Greater is one who acts because he is commanded than one who acts. It defies logic, right? But the idea is that the commandments, as Rabbi Garfinkel was actually.
Volunteers volunteer to benefit themselves, to feel good about themselves, or someone who's getting paid, they're doing it because of the end result, not because of an emotional self-gratification.
Well, I think it's the opposite. Yeah.
No.
If you volunteer, if you volunteer, you feel commanded to do it because you're helping others, and if you're paid, you're helping yourself. Because I don't have a job right now. I would love to get some money. But like, and that's helping me. That's not helping others.
Yeah, but if you're volunteering, a lot of the times people volunteer for the sake of getting the acknowledgement that they volunteered and did a good deed. Very few people would actually volunteer for the sake of volunteering without having an ulterior motive.
I disagree. I think people that want to be recognized give a ton of money.
I would say you're both right, but it doesn't necessarily follow through in the example of the firefighters, because what we're talking about here is a mitzvah. Okay, so when it comes to a mitzvah, like Rabbi Garfinkel was saying, the whole idea of a mitzvah is to connect. It's this idea of connecting to God. It's this idea of pushing yourself and becoming a better person. And you're supposed to be growing through the mitzvah. And if you're doing the mitzvah because you're inspired, it's because it just feels like a good thing. In the end of the day, what you're doing is something. It's still within yourself. You haven't grown beyond yourself. It's incredibly amazing that someone will go and volunteer. But the fact that they're doing it right now is not a sign that they've grown beyond themselves. They're not pushing themselves beyond their limits. They are already at a great spot, at a great place. That's amazing. But if they were born with a volunteering spirit and then they go ahead and they volunteer for the rest of their life, they haven't necessarily moved beyond that starting point with which they were growing. When you are commanded to do something, it's not coming from you. It's coming from Hashem, who's above you and beyond you, and saying, I want to push you now. I'm your coach. I'm your great.
Like I'm helping someone else who doesn't know as much as I do, but I'm still pushing myself to do more or to learn more than I know now.
Amazing. So the idea of pushing yourself means you're moving beyond, right? When you're at the gym and you've gone to the point where you're like ready to quit, that's when the coach, when the instructor comes and pushes you beyond and saying, no, you're not going to quit. And that's a mitzvah. The mitzvah is this idea of moving beyond yourself, moving beyond that original starting point. There's a video that some of you in the room have seen before, I've shown before, and I'm very happy to show again because I think this is something we should watch maybe once a month. It's absolutely incredibly powerful. This is a simulation that was created by some lab in I forget where in Western Europe, and what they're basically trying to show is man's place in the universe.
I have one question. Sorry to interrupt. The guy that's pushing the guy weightlifting to say, "Come on, you can do it, do more." Who is he in that scenario?
That's God. It's God saying you don't necessarily feel like doing this right now, and do it anyways. You have a mitzvah to be a good person now, even when you don't feel like it.
So is he volunteering to help us?
God?
Yeah.
That's a complex philosophical question that will take us beyond the scope of this presentation. But here is, you'll find various versions of this online, and they all follow the same kind of basic idea. You have this spot in Europe, and you start zooming out. So you get smaller and smaller and smaller. Now you can barely see the little dot, seeing other players in the solar system. Here you see the sun. We're zooming out of the entire solar system. Start picking up speed now. Barely, you can't see the sun anymore. It's just another star. Entire Milky Way. Now watch that galaxy disappear and just be one dot among. It actually goes on, but This is the Milky Way. Lots of other galaxies. And that spot in Europe where you're like dealing with your thing or whatever, it seems so important, suddenly you're nothing, okay? And you'll find lots of versions of this. Now, very interesting because the entire perspective here is like, it kind of leaves you feeling like, who am I? What am I? You know, like you just zoomed out literally and like, it's all so meaningless in the greater scope of things. But it's interesting that Torah has a very, very different perspective. So the Torah says, each and every person must declare the world was created for me, meaning I am the most important being in the world. And Rashi adds on to that, saying, this means I am considered as important as the entire world, meaning it would be worthy for the entire world to be created just for me. Now, how is that possible? There's billions. Exactly. There's billions of people in the world. I am just another person. And in that world that we're referring to is planet Earth. And that's just one planet among lots of other planets that's just circling one star amongst billions and billions of stars, which together are just one galaxy amongst countless galaxies, right? How? Right. So you're right that it's important to remember that you are not the only person in the world, but if you think of every person that way, right? The Torah says anyone who saves one soul, it's like they saved the entire world, right? It's not talking about your soul, it's talking about that other person's soul, because every single person, it's not just you, it's every single person has to see themselves as if the entire world was created for them. Now, why is that? The reason for that is because no two people are the same. Even if you have an identical, quote-unquote, identical twin, you are not the same. Every single person is different. They have their own unique circumstances in their life, their own unique personality, their own unique set of tools with which they were born, their own unique set of personality challenges, their character traits, and every single person was designed differently because their role in the universe is unique. And that's the idea that it's conveying, is that every single person's uniqueness, there are no doubles, you were created, and the entire universe would be worth it to create just for you, and there are so many others like you, right? But the entire thing would be worth it just for you. It's because of this journey that you have with your own character traits. There's no one else who's the same. That's your own unique journey, and that is so important. It would be worth it for the entire world to be created just for you. So if we were to take that video and show a Jewish version of it, it would actually be the reverse, right? You have all these different galaxies, and there's one little dot, the Milky Way. And you know why all these galaxies were created? Really, just for that one galaxy. And if you zoom in on that galaxy and you start getting a little closer, you see that galaxy is actually millions and millions and millions of stars, and every one of those stars has lots and lots of planets orbiting, and it's this whole thing, and there's so many countless of them, right? And the purpose of all these stars is because there's one little star called the sun that has its own set of planets orbiting around it. And it's froze. Doesn't usually happen to the sun, but it happened now.
It's too hot.
Let's try that again. So much for my presentation not having glitches.
Rabbi, what do you mean all the stars were made for just the Earth?
Just a moment. Great question. The world was worth it to be created for every single person. So you have all those different stars. Amongst them, there's that one star called the sun, pretty average, actually relatively small. Around it, you have all these various planets that are orbiting, and there's this one cute little planet called planet Earth. We actually call it home. And when you zoom into that planet, you see amongst all the different continents there's this one continent called America, there's North America, there's the United States, there's Chicago. In Chicago, there's this neighborhood called River North. Oh my gosh, it's a little dizzying. And in River North, there's Franklin. And in Franklin, there's a bunch of people who are sitting around a table trying to figure out how they can connect to Torah and Judaism. So you ask, like, how is it possible to say that all those galaxies were created for me? All those. So here's the Jewish approach. You spoke about, like.
You didn't even warn me for that. My posture wasn't great.
Chef's watching every second.
So literally, it's true that there are galaxies. This is mind-blowing, okay? Just hold that thought in the back of your mind, but it's true that there are galaxies countless light years away, that their entire purpose of existence is that the light from them will travel the entire way to the night sky as you walk outside and you look up and there's an extra pixel there. Okay? It's mind-blowing. But that's literally the purpose of their existence. Their existence is there so that the sky will be a little more breathtaking for you and a little more inspiring for every single person in this room. Okay? It's the opposite of the way this video is usually viewed. That's why we had to I had to flip it in reverse, right? But that is the Torah view. Now, how do we deal with all those different character traits, all those different things, the anger, all these different things? So it's actually interesting. Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz, who was this great Jewish thinker, the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, he explains that only through guarding the qualities that are already his naturally does a person become complete, because in truth, the entire basis for personal work is only in the qualities that exist in him naturally. If we will only guard them and use them in the right way, never veering from his own essential nature, he will reach his ultimate completeness. He will fully change to be good, and even his bad traits will be reversed to being fully good. This is not the way we think about it. When someone tells you you have to work on your anger, you have to work on this, you think that the main focus is going to be thinking about how terrible you are for being angry, how terrible you are for being lazy, how terrible for being cruel. And that's what you got to do. You got to just push down and say, I'm a terrible, terrible person, right? That Jewish guilt. What he's saying is actually the reverse. Try to think what you do right and what character traits you have that are positive. Just make yourself a list. Whatever the flip side is of those cute emojis before. Be it, I'm energetic, I'm sensitive, I'm caring, whatever it may be, I'm patient, right? And try to see which one of those you excel in and start focusing on that, and hope that will start influencing the rest of you. So it's not about not being cognizant of these shortcomings, but it's not focusing and fixating on them, being aware of them, having them in mind whenever you see them cropping, saying, oh, I don't like this. But your primary focus and work is going to be on the positive. Every person has a unique quality that is naturally so perfectly good that he cannot even understand another person who is defective in that respect. We all have these things when we're getting ready to gossip, which we should not do, as Rabbi Garfinkel said. There's things that we're going to be saying, like, oh, I can't believe that guy is so lazy or so cruel, or so, how could he, right? Because there's something in us. We excel in that thing. We are so not lazy. When we see someone else lazy, it bothers us. Now that's a sign. We should not be gossiping, but that is a sign that I found something that I excel in. That's why it's hard for me to relate to someone who has that issue. So when you see that, it's not to say, oh, he's such a terrible person. Say, oh, wow, here's something I can work with, and hopefully that'll influence the rest of my personality. Every person is given some particular quality for which he can change himself to being fully good. It's not about just being energetic, whatever it is we're talking about. That has the ability to affect the rest of our behavior. Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe, also a great Jewish thinker, says, one of the profound truths in creation would seem to be that each man's nature fits his task in life, so that is specifically his best natural quality that can overcome the most basic fault that he has. Focus on where we have it good, and hopefully when we're aware of what our shortcomings are, not fixating them, fixating the good, that can help overpower those negative things and just make us into much better people. One who succeeds in grasping his chief quality and knowing his chief fault, right? So you also want to know what your chief fault is, has attained a tremendous thing. For now, he knows what God asks from him, right? So just to end off, when my wife and I were trying to figure out whether we should be moving to Chicago, we came on a visit to Chicago to meet this great surgeon. We moved here for medical reasons for my daughter. She has this skin condition, and we met with the surgeon, and we showed him my daughter, and he was, he's this top surgeon, and he was looking, and whatever. We were trying to figure out whether he would advise us that we can actually do the surgeries in Israel, whether we should come here, and he's looking over my daughter, trying to see where, trying to assess the situation. And my wife and I saw that he wasn't really noticing all the different spots where she had issues. And we said, did you see over here she has also, and over here also? And he laughed. Right? He was trying to take pictures. We realized he missed some of the spots. He laughed. He's like, I don't care about where she has issues in her skin. I'm a surgeon. My job is to figure out where her skin is good and work with that to fix the rest of the problem. It's like, I'm not interested in the bad skin. That's not what I work with. I don't work with the bad skin. And at the time, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it stuck in my mind. And then eventually I realized this is an incredible message. This is exactly how we're supposed to become better people. We constantly like to focus on where we have shortcomings and just focus on that, allow it to drag us down. Once we're dragged down, we have two options. We can either be depressed or we can go online and see that, hey, just be happy with yourself because forget it. It's like too much to deal with. When you put that aside, you should be cognizant of these shortcomings, move them to the back burner, focus on what we have good that we can work with to hopefully overcome and become much better people in all areas of life. Hopefully, this is by way of introduction. We'll see much more about that as the life seminar progresses. Thank you.